The galaxy classified Earth as a Class 12 death world because nothing was supposed to survive there. Professor Kelthara's 3 eye stalks swiveled independently across the lecture hall, taking in the 72 students packed into xenobiology 30. Well, 72 if you counted properly, which meant accounting for the Kuksari student who technically existed in 4 dimensions simultaneously. The blob of sentient gas hovering near the ceiling and that one Velcron who insisted on attending class despite being technically deceased by most biological standards. Settle down, Kelthara announced, her voice translator crackling slightly as it converted her native clicking sounds into galactic standard. She tapped one of her 6 manipulation appendages against the hollow podium, bringing up a 3-dimensional display that rotated slowly in the center of the amphitheater. The students went silent. There, spinning in ominous blue and green splendor, was the image every xenobiology student dreaded seeing in upper-level courses. Earth. A collective shudder rippled through the classroom. The Matherian in row 3 released a puff of nervous sulfur compounds. 2 glebes in the back physically merged together in what Kelthara assumed was either terror or arousal, though with glebes you could never really tell. Today, Kelthara continued, her eye stalks narrowing with dramatic flair, because she absolutely lived for this lecture, we examine what the Galactic Habitability Council has classified as a Class 12 death world. For those of you who skipped the reading, that is the highest classification we have. We had to invent Class 12 specifically for this planet. She paused for effect. There is no Class 13 because, frankly, the review committee could not imagine anything worse. More nervous chittering. One student, a crystalline Zephoid, actually cracked slightly, which was their species equivalent of breaking out in a cold sweat. In the very back row, tucked behind a support column and practically invisible among the shadows, sat Iris Caldwell. Human. Exchange student, scholarship recipient from the Sol System Cultural Integration Program. She was chewing on the end of her stylus, looking mildly confused, her notebook already half filled with what appeared to be doodles of cats wearing tiny hats. Kelthara had not noticed her yet. This was about to change. Let us begin with the atmosphere, Kelthara said, pulling up a detailed chemical breakdown that hovered in angry red text above the planet's hologram. Oxygen. 21% oxygen, just sitting there in the air, waiting to oxidize everything it touches. A Frillinax student in the front row made a gagging sound, which was impressive considering Frillinax did not have mouths. For context, Kelthara continued, warming to her subject. Most civilized worlds maintain oxygen levels below 3%. Anything higher than 8% is considered an industrial hazard requiring full protective equipment and hazard pay. Earth's atmosphere is literally classified as a corrosive agent by galactic safety standards. She zoomed in on a molecular diagram, her eye stalks quivering with academic enthusiasm. Every breath taken on this world actively damages organic tissue through oxidative stress. The native life forms have had to develop incredibly complex cellular mechanisms just to prevent their own atmosphere from dissolving them from the inside out. And do not even get me started on the oxygen fires. Oxygen fires, squeaked a small pibbling whose species communicated entirely through sequential squeaks. Oh yes, the atmosphere is so saturated with this reactive element that combustion occurs with terrifying ease. Entire forests spontaneously ignite. The planet literally sets itself on fire on a regular basis. Kelthara pulled up footage of a wildfire, flames leaping hundreds of feet into the air. The Matherian student released another nervous puff, this time tinged with green, which meant he was approximately 30 seconds from fleeing the classroom entirely. But wait, it gets worse, Kelthara said, because of course it did. The water cycle? She displayed an animation of Earth's hydrological system, complete with menacing arrows, showing the movement of water from oceans to atmosphere to land and back again. This planet's surface is 70% covered in a substance that is a universal solvent. Water falls from the sky completely unannounced, sometimes for days at a time. This precipitation can freeze into solid projectiles that plummet at terminal velocity, or it can arrive in droplets so fine they saturate the air itself, making breathing difficult even if you could survive the oxygen content. A Velcron raised what might have been a hand, though it was hard to tell. Yes, question? Professor, are you telling us the sky attacks the inhabitants? Regularly. Yes. Sometimes the water arrives in crystalline form, accumulating in depths that can bury entire settlements. Other times it comes as localized vortices with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. The natives have names for these phenomena: blizzards, hurricanes, monsoons. They speak of them the way we might discuss scheduled maintenance. In the back row, Iris had stopped doodling cats. She was now writing something in her notebook, her eyebrows furrowed in what appeared to be concentration or possibly constipation. Hard to tell with humans. And then, Kelthara said, her voice dropping to what she considered an ominous whisper, there is the solar radiation. She pulled up a spectrum analysis of Earth's sun. This G-type main sequence star bombards the planet with electromagnetic radiation across multiple spectrums. Ultraviolet, infrared, visible light so intense it can literally burn tissue. The native life forms have developed pigmentation systems specifically to absorb this punishment. Some of them even voluntarily expose themselves to increase their pigmentation levels, a process they call, and I am not making this up, tanning. Why? Asked the glebes, who had separated again. Why would they do this? Aesthetics? Apparently. The classroom erupted in horrified chattering. Iris looked down at her notes, tilted her head, crossed something out, and wrote something else. Then she raised her hand slightly, reconsidered, and lowered it again. Now, if the atmosphere and radiation have not convinced you, Kelthara said, manipulating the hologram to display a gravity well diagram, let us discuss the gravitational field. She highlighted the numbers in pulsing orange text. 9.8 meters per second squared. Standard Earth gravity. The pibbling squeaked in what the translator rendered as, "Oh no, oh no, oh no." To put this in perspective, Kelthara explained, galactic standard gravity, which most of our homeworlds cluster around, is approximately 6.2 meters per second squared. Earth's gravitational pull is nearly 60% stronger than what most species in this room evolved to handle. She pulled up a simulation of a standard glorp, a common species throughout the galaxy, attempting to walk on Earth's surface. The holographic glorp took 2 steps, then collapsed into a pancake-like shape, its skeletal structure audibly crunching in the audio feed. Several students looked away. Most species would experience immediate structural failure. Your bones, if you have them, would fracture under your own weight. Your circulatory systems would struggle to pump fluids against the increased pressure. Even standing upright would require muscular strength most of us simply do not possess. A Zephoid student, still cracked from earlier, raised a crystalline appendage. How do the native life forms cope? They are built like organic tanks, Kelthara said flatly. Dense, skeletal structures, excessive musculature, cardiovascular systems that operate under pressures that would rupture our vessels. They are, essentially, biological armor wrapped around more biological armor. She switched to a new display, this one showing temperature variations. And if you somehow survived the gravity, the temperature fluctuations would finish you off. Earth experiences seasonal variations that swing from -40 degrees Celsius to +50 degrees Celsius, depending on location. That is a 90-degree range, shouted someone from the middle rows. Correct. And the natives simply, and I quote from their own literature, dress accordingly. Kelthara's eye stalks expressed what could only be interpreted as profound disbelief. They add or remove fabric layers, and consider this adequate protection against thermal extremes that would send most species into hibernation or outright system failure. She activated a montage of Earth's various violent phenomena. Earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanic eruptions that painted the sky with molten rock, tsunamis that swallowed coastlines, tornadoes that ripped buildings from their foundations. The classroom watched in stunned silence as the planet displayed its casual brutality. In the back row, Iris's hand went up, hesitantly at first, then with more confidence. Kelthara did not see it. She was too busy queuing up the next segment of her presentation, her eye stalks practically vibrating with the joy of academic horror. Iris's hand stayed up for 5 seconds, then 10, then 15. Nobody noticed. She slowly lowered it, shrugged, and went back to her notes, writing something that made her smile slightly. But perhaps, Kelthara said, her voice taking on the tone of someone about to deliver truly devastating news. The most horrifying aspect of Earth is not the planet itself, but what lives on it. She pulled up a microscopic view that made several students recoil. Bacteria, viruses, prions, fungi, parasites. Earth is absolutely teeming with microorganisms and nearly all of them are catastrophically hostile to non-native biology. The image zoomed in on what appeared to be a normal drop of Earth water. Hundreds, thousands of tiny organisms swam through it, colliding, consuming, reproducing. A single milliliter of Earth soil contains up to 1 billion bacterial cells. These organisms produce enzymes that would liquefy most of our cellular structures on contact. The human digestive system alone hosts trillions of bacteria that would be classified as biological weapons on any civilized world. Professor? Iris's hand was up again, waving slightly. Kelthara did not pause. The native lifeforms have developed something called an immune system, a dedicated biological warfare division inside their own bodies that fights constant battles against microscopic invaders. Every single moment of every single day, there is a war happening inside them. But Professor, I think there might be questions at the end, please, Kelthara said absently, not even looking toward the back row. Iris's hand lowered. She sighed and made another note. Moving on to the macro-scale threats, Kelthara continued, pulling up images that made the Matharian student release a puff so large it briefly obscured the front 3 rows. The food chain. A diagram appeared showing the predator-prey relationships of Earth's ecosystem. It looked like a nightmare drawn by a particularly disturbed child. Everything on this planet is either trying to eat something else or trying to avoid being eaten. Often both simultaneously. There are ambush predators, pursuit predators, pack hunters, solo stalkers, aerial attackers, aquatic terrors, and subterranean horrors. She displayed an image of a great white shark. This creature can detect electrical impulses from other organisms, has rows of replaceable teeth, and can smell a single drop of blood in 25 million drops of water. Next came a saltwater crocodile. The species has remained virtually unchanged for 200 million years because it achieved predatory perfection and saw no need to improve. Then a picture of a box jellyfish. This organism is nearly transparent, virtually impossible to see in water, and possesses venom potent enough to kill a full-grown human in minutes. Oh, speaking of venom, Kelthara said, her enthusiasm reaching new heights, there are over 600 venomous species on Earth, and over 100,000 poisonous species. The natives have to actively teach their offspring which colorful things will kill them if touched or eaten. Iris's hand shot up again. Actually, Professor, most of those are not really, as I said, questions at the end. Iris put her hand down, crossed her arms, and slumped in her seat. The seasonal changes bring their own horrors, Kelthara went on. Plant life that dies and resurrects on an annual cycle. Animals that gorge themselves and then enter voluntary comas for months. Mass migrations of billions of organisms simultaneously, creating what the humans call, with typical understatement, rush hour traffic. She paused, letting the weight of all this sink in. This planet is a nightmare wrapped in catastrophe, covered in poison, and held together by gravity strong enough to crush your ancestors. In the back row, Iris was writing furiously now, her expression hovering somewhere between amused and exasperated. Kelthara was pulling up her grand finale, a composite image of all Earth's horrors, layered together in a visual symphony of death and destruction, when a voice from the back row cut through her presentation. Okay, I am sorry, but I really have to say something. Every eye stalk, optical sensor and sensory organ in the room swiveled toward the source. Iris Caldwell was standing, her notebook clutched in one hand, looking politely apologetic but also deeply confused. Yes? Kelthara said, her tone suggesting that this interruption had better be worth it. Hi. Iris. Human. Exchange student from Earth. She gave a little wave. And I do not want to be rude or anything, but I think there might be some miscommunication happening here. The classroom went so quiet you could hear the Matharians' nervous sulfur compounds gently diffusing through the air filtration system. Miscommunication, Kelthara repeated slowly. Yeah, because, like, Iris gestured at the hologram of Earth still rotating ominously in the center of the room, you are making it sound like my planet is some kind of hellscape that actively tries to murder everything, and I grew up playing outside, so... The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when someone has just divided by zero in front of a room full of mathematicians. You, the pibbling finally squeaked, played. Outside? Yeah? Like every day after school? Iris said as if this was the most normal thing in the universe. We had this park near my house with swings and a jungle gym and everything. My friends and I used to ride our bikes there, play tag, climb trees. You know, normal kid stuff. One of the glebes fainted. Just straight up lost cohesion and puddled onto the floor. You climbed, Kelthara said, her voice very faint. The vegetation, trees. Yeah. There was this big oak tree in my backyard that had perfect branches for climbing. I used to sit up there and read books for hours. Sometimes I would fall asleep up there and my mom would have to call me down for dinner. You fell asleep. A Zephoid said, its crack widening, in elevated positions. Voluntarily. In the crushing gravity. Well, yeah, I mean the branch was pretty thick, so it was not like I was going to fall or anything. Usually? Several students screamed in unison. Iris blinked. Okay, why is everyone freaking out? Because, Kelthara said, and her voice had taken on the quality of someone whose entire understanding of the universe was currently being rearranged. You are describing behaviors that should be physiologically impossible for a species subjected to the conditions I have just outlined. But I am from Earth, Iris said. So are, 8 billion other humans. We all grew up in those conditions. It is just, like normal. The oxygen, the Velcron managed. The toxic, corrosive oxygen. Oh, you mean the air? Iris looked genuinely puzzled. Yeah, we breathe that. All the time. Kind of have to actually, or we die. The atmospheric precipitation. Kelthara was not quite shouting, but it was close. Rain? I mean, yeah, sometimes you get wet. That is why we invented umbrellas and rain jackets. It is not that big a deal. Some people actually like walking in the rain. I think it is kind of nice, honestly. Nice, someone whispered. She said nice. Someone else confirmed. The classroom erupted into absolute chaos. Students were talking over each other. Several were frantically taking notes. The Matherian had turned a color that probably was not medically advisable, and somewhere in the middle rows, a student was rocking back and forth making a sound that the translator could not even process. Kelthara held up all 6 of her appendages for silence. Miss Caldwell, she said very carefully, I think you had better come down here and explain exactly what you mean by normal kid stuff. Iris shrugged, grabbed her notebook and started making her way to the front of the classroom. Iris reached the front of the classroom, stepping around the puddled glebe with practiced ease. She set her notebook down on the hollow podium and looked out at 71 terrified faces. Wow! Terrified face equivalents. So, where should I start? She asked. The beginning, Kelthara said weakly. Your childhood. What was it like? Okay. Well, I grew up in a beach town in California. That is on the west coast of North America, one of Earth's continents. Iris pulled up a map on the hologram, pointing to a spot along the coastline. My house was about 3 blocks from the ocean, so my sister and I spent basically every summer day at the beach, the ocean. The pibbling squeaked. The 70% of your planet covered in universal solvent. Yeah, the Pacific Ocean specifically. We would swim in it for hours. Body surfing, boogie boarding, just floating around in the waves. Sometimes we would dive down and look for sand dollars or interesting shells. A frill-necked student made a sound like air escaping from a deflating balloon. You submerged yourself, Kelthara said, in the solvent, voluntarily, for recreation. Well, yeah, swimming is fun. Plus it is great exercise. I was on the swim team in high school. We practiced every morning at 6 a.m. before school started. 6 a.m. A student repeated. In the morning, when the sun is rising, yeah, practice was usually an hour, hour and a half. We would do laps, work on our strokes, build endurance. Coach Martinez was pretty intense about training. Iris smiled at the memory, completely oblivious to the fact that half the class looked like they were about to require medical intervention. Oh, and in the summer the ocean water would get really warm, like 22-23 degrees Celsius, but in winter it would drop to 14 or 15 degrees, so you would need a wetsuit if you wanted to surf. My friend Jackson never bothered though. He said the cold was invigorating. Your friend, the Velcron said slowly, described thermal shock as invigorating. Yeah. Jackson was kind of weird. He also ran marathons for fun, which I never understood. Like running for 42 kilometers when nobody is chasing you. Why? The translator struggled with the collective sound of horrified incomprehension that rippled through the classroom. Wait, Kelthara said, holding up an appendage. Go back. The food you consumed during this childhood. Oh sure, I mean typical stuff. Breakfast was usually cereal with milk, or eggs and toast, or oatmeal with fruit. My mom was really big on us eating healthy, so we always had fresh vegetables with dinner. Lots of salads. Salads, Kelthara repeated. Yeah, you know, raw leafy greens, lettuce, spinach, arugula. Sometimes with tomatoes, cucumbers, carrots. We grew a lot of our own vegetables in the backyard garden, actually. I was in charge of the tomato plants. You consumed, a Zephoid said. Its cracked now running the entire length of its crystalline body, uncooked biological matter, from plants you cultivated, in the corrosive atmosphere. I mean, when you say it like that it sounds weird, but yeah, fresh vegetables are good for you. Lots of vitamins and minerals and fiber. Sometimes we would pick strawberries right off the plant and eat them on the spot, still warm from the sun. Someone in the back made a retching sound. Oh, and we ate fruit all the time. Apples, oranges, bananas, grapes. My dad had this thing where he would slice up an apple and eat it with peanut butter as a snack. I still do that sometimes. It is really good. Iris was just chatting now, completely casual, describing what to her was the most mundane possible existence. In the fall, the temperature would drop, you know, down to like 10 or 15 degrees Celsius sometimes, so we would wear jackets and jeans instead of shorts and t-shirts. But we would still play outside. Touch football, soccer, just hanging out at the park. Sometimes it would rain and we would jump in puddles or have mud fights. Mud fights, Kelthara said faintly. Yeah, you get mud on each other. It is fun. I mean, your parents get mad when you track it into the house, but that is part of the experience. And the summer, the pibbling managed. When the temperature rose, oh, it would get up to 35, sometimes 40 degrees Celsius. That was pretty hot, so we would go to the beach more, or run through the sprinklers in the yard, or go to the community pool. My sister and I had a lemonade stand one summer. We sat outside for like 6 hours a day selling cups of lemonade to people walking by. 6 hours, someone whispered. In direct solar radiation. Yeah, we made $43 that summer. We thought we were rich. The classroom had gone beyond horror into some new emotion that did not have a name yet. Kelthara's eye stalks had gone completely rigid, a sign of extreme cognitive stress in her species. She stared at Iris for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. Miss Caldwell, I do not mean to be rude, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Would you be willing to demonstrate some of these physical capabilities you have described? Oh, sure, Iris said with a shrug. What do you want me to do? The gravity. You claim it does not affect you adversely. Can you prove this? Okay. Iris looked around, then dropped to the floor. I will do some push-ups, I guess. She proceeded to perform 20 perfect push-ups in smooth succession, her arms extending and bending with what appeared to the assembled students as terrifying ease. Then she hopped to her feet, barely breathing hard. Want me to do more? I can do jumping jacks or burpees or whatever. Burpees? Kelthara asked weakly. Yeah, they are terrible. You squat down, kick your legs back into a push-up position. Do a push-up, jump your legs back in, then jump straight up. My gym teacher in high school loved them. We would do like 50 at a time. To demonstrate, Iris performed 5 burpees right there in front of the podium. Each jump took her at least 30 centimeters off the ground. The Frillnax student fainted. You are launching yourself into the air, a student breathed, against 60% greater gravitational force than standard, and you are not even breathing heavily. I mean, I used to run cross-country. You build up endurance. 5 burpees is nothing. Kelthara made a decision that might haunt her for the rest of her academic career. What is in your bag, Miss Caldwell? My bag? Books, my tablet, a water bottle, some snacks. Iris grabbed her backpack from where she had left it and rummaged through it. Here, I have a water bottle and an apple I brought from the cafeteria this morning. She unscrewed the water bottle and took a long drink. Several students gasped. That water has not been filtered or treated in any way, the Velcrin asked. I mean, it came from the fountain in the dorm, so I guess it has been through whatever water treatment Earth uses, chlorine or whatever. But no, I did not specially filter it or anything. She pulled out the apple, a bright red sphere that looked shiny and completely innocent. She bit into it with a loud crunch. Oh my gods, she is consuming it raw, someone whimpered. Iris chewed, swallowed, and took another bite. Do you guys want some? I can cut it up and share. No. At least 15 students shouted simultaneously. Okay, geez. Just offering. She took another bite. More for me, I guess. Miss Caldwell, Kelthara said, and her voice had taken on the quality of someone who knows they are about to regret asking a question, but cannot stop themselves. You mentioned that your friend ran marathons. For fun. Please tell me that is not a common human activity. Oh no, it is super common, Iris said, finishing her apple and tossing the core into a recycling chute. There are thousands of marathons every year all over the world. Big ones like Boston, New York, Tokyo. People train for months to run them. Some people do ultra-marathons, which are even longer, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers. Some races go for 24 hours straight. The pibbling made a sound like a tea kettle reaching critical pressure. And people do this, Kelthara said carefully, willingly. Nobody is forcing them. Yeah, they pay money to enter the races. Sometimes hundreds of dollars. They pay. A Zephoid said, its entire crystalline structure now spider-webbed with cracks, to torture themselves. I would not call it torture. People like the challenge, the sense of accomplishment, same reason people climb mountains. Climb mountains, Kelthara repeated in a monotone. Yeah, like Mount Everest. That is the tallest mountain on Earth, about 8,800 meters above sea level. Hundreds of people climb it every year. It is super dangerous. People die up there pretty regularly because the oxygen is so thin and the temperature drops to like -40 degrees, but people keep doing it anyway. A student in the middle row slid slowly out of their chair and onto the floor. We also have rock climbing, Iris continued, apparently not noticing the medical crisis unfolding around her. That is where you climb up sheer rock faces using just your hands and feet. Sometimes with ropes and safety equipment. Sometimes without. Free soloing is when you climb without any safety gear at all. There is this guy, Alex Honnold, who climbed a 900-meter cliff face with no ropes. There is a whole documentary about it. Why? The Velcron whispered. Just why? For the challenge? The views? I do not know. I have never been into climbing. I prefer water sports. Oh, speaking of which, some people deliberately swim with sharks. On purpose, at least 20 students yelled. Yeah, there are cage diving experiences where you get in a metal cage and they lower you into water with great white sharks. Or you can swim with whale sharks without a cage because they are gentle. Some people surf in areas known for shark activity. Pipeline in Hawaii is famous for big waves and shark sightings. Kelthara had stopped taking notes. She was just staring, her eye stalks frozen in what might have been existential horror. Oh, and skydiving is pretty popular, Iris added. That is where you jump out of a perfectly functional aircraft at like 4,000 meters and freefall for a while before opening a parachute. My uncle does it every year for his birthday. He says it is better than therapy. Your species, Kelthara said slowly, has a concept called therapy, which suggests you understand psychological wellness, and yet you also have members who jump out of flying vehicles for recreational purposes. Yeah, pretty much. I need to recalculate my entire curriculum, Kelthara muttered, pulling up her tablet with shaking appendages. Every assumption I have made about survivability thresholds, every baseline measurement, all of it is wrong. Is it though? Iris asked, genuinely curious. For humans it is all just normal. That, Kelthara said, is precisely the problem. Wait, a student near the front said, their translator rendering their species-specific panic sounds into galactic standard. How old were you when you started doing all these activities? The swimming, the climbing, the outdoor exposure? Oh, I do not know, like 4 or 5, Iris said, thinking back. My parents took me to the beach when I was a baby, but I started swimming lessons when I was around 4. Climbing trees probably started around 6 or 7. The classroom went so silent you could hear the life support systems humming in the walls. 4 years old, Kelthara said. You were 4 years old. A juvenile. A child. Yeah, most kids learn to swim pretty young. It is a safety thing, actually, so we do not drown. Duran, several students shrieked. And at school, Iris continued, completely missing the rising hysteria, we had recess twice a day. That is where they send all the kids outside for like 30 minutes to run around and play, completely unsupervised except for 1 or 2 teachers watching from a distance. We would play on the playground, which had swings and slides and monkey bars. Kids would hang upside down from the bars, jump off the swings, climb to the top of the slide. Metal structures, a student breathed. In the solar radiation, with children hanging upside down in crushing gravity. Oh, and field trips. We went camping in 5th grade, spent 3 days and 2 nights in the woods. We hiked, learned to build fires, slept in tents. It was great. We roasted marshmallows and told scary stories. You sent children, the pibbling squeaked, into the wilderness. To sleep. On the ground. Where the predators live. Well, yeah, but we had adult supervision. And bear safety protocols. Mostly we just had to worry about raccoons getting into our food. Kelthara stood abruptly, all 6 appendages slamming onto the podium. Class dismissed. Everyone out. I need to convene an emergency faculty meeting immediately. She turned to Iris. Miss Caldwell, you are coming with me. The xenobiology department needs to hear this directly. Am I in trouble? Iris asked. No, child, Kelthara said, her voice hollow. We are the ones in trouble. We have been teaching xenobiology for 70 years, and apparently we understood nothing. The students filed out of the lecture hall in complete silence, moving like survivors of a natural disaster. The glebes had to be carried out in a bucket. The Metherian left a trail of stress compounds that would require professional cleaning. 3 students went directly to the campus medical center for psychological evaluation. Kelthara stood at the podium, pulling up form after form on her tablet, muttering to herself, reclassification protocols, survivability index recalibration, atmospheric toxicity baselines, gravitational tolerance metrics, all of it, complete overhaul required. Iris shifted her backpack on her shoulders, looking uncomfortable. Professor, I really did not mean to cause this much trouble. I just thought maybe the curriculum had some outdated information or something. Kelthara's eye stalks focused on her, really looked at her, for the first time since the lecture began. A human. 5 foot 6 inches of dense bone and excessive musculature, wrapped in skin designed to handle radiation that would blister most species. A being that breathed corrosive gas, drank solvent, ate poison and thought crushing gravity was just the price of admission for a fun day at the beach. A species that deliberately exposed their juveniles to danger as a form of education and entertainment. A species that invented activities specifically to flirt with death because apparently natural dangers were not sufficient. Miss Caldwell, Kelthara said quietly, when your people applied for galactic community membership, we read your application as a tragic tale of survival against impossible odds. We pitied you. We thought you were victims of a hostile universe, clinging desperately to existence on a nightmare world. She paused, her eye stalks drooping slightly. We were wrong. You are not victims of Earth. You are products of it. You were not trapped on a death world. You were forged by one. I guess, Iris said. But it is just home, you know. Kelthara made a sound that the translator gave up trying to interpret. Yes, home. A Class 12 death world that raises its young by throwing them outside to play in acid rain and solar radiation. Of course. Why not? She looked back at her tablet, at the mountain of revisions waiting for her. The rest of the galaxy has been asking the wrong question, she muttered. We keep wondering what could survive on Earth. We should have been asking what could survive humans leaving it. Iris just smiled and headed for the door, already thinking about her afternoon jog around campus. Behind her, Kelthara began composing a message to the Galactic Threat Assessment Committee. Subject line, urgent reclassification required. We may have made a terrible mistake. In the end, the galaxy had spent centuries cataloging death worlds and their dangers, creating elaborate classification systems and safety protocols. Nobody had thought to add a classification for the species that looked at the death world and said, nice place. Let's raise our kids here. The humans, it turned out, were not the ones who needed protection from the universe. The universe needed protection from them. And somewhere in the admissions office, 17 more human exchange student applications were waiting for approval. Kelthara added a note to her message. We are going to need a bigger classification system.